Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken, and as ever I'm joined by my co-host and colleague Brian Dick. Today, just to lay the table, we're going to be talking about Blues' cup successes last week against Fulham's 21s in the Bristol Street Motors and of course against Sutton United in the FA Cup on Sunday, before looking ahead to the League One return against Northampton Town this weekend. Brian, thank you for filling in my absence and going to Sutton. How's it been over the past week?
As ever, he says. He's not been at work. He's not been at work for 5 weeks. It was enjoyable actually. It was a new ground. Probably one of the most surly chip van staff I've ever come across. A lady who was not happy in her work. Blues got the list, and we'll come on to the performance later, but the result was all that mattered. Blues went through. Certainly. And you obviously missed the 7-1 against Fulham, didn't you? That was fun. Always good to see a Blues team score 7. Comes along every 30 years, I think. Yeah,
the battering of the children.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. Poor lads. Brian, just start with Sutton then, in a little bit more depth this time. It was only 1-0. It wasn't, I watched it as well on the TV, and it wasn't really a thriller, was it? But I never felt like Blues were going to lose the game. They certainly had control.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And, those who want to criticise the overall performance, and maybe Chris Davies, I think you have to recognise that Davies was in a little bit of a difficult situation. Sutton really, really defended deeply. There was no space in behind them. Often there was 8, 9 in their box. And it was a little bit like, playing with a dead mouse at times. And I kind of sympathised with Chris Davies when he said at the end of the game that he was kind of surprised that Sutton didn't come out and chase the game. Even at 1-0 down, they were still very, very conservative. I don't really know what Davies could have done differently. His players could have shown more quality. They could have tried a few more things. But in terms of what he was asking them to do, as you said, the game was always under control, albeit the scoreboard, suggested there was still some jeopardy in the situation. I think if Davies, makes some half-time wholesale changes in a bid to open the game up, he then potentially end up having a game of basketball and getting involved in the sort of to and fro that Blues didn't need to be in. It was a really odd game. It's not odd. It was quite a featureless game because Blues kept doing the same thing. Sutton kept doing the same thing. And in the end, it was one goal that settled it. I suppose Steve Morrison would say that he was playing for the one moment, which Sutton then had, didn't they? The volley just from Ashley Naisden at the end. If he makes a better contact with that, it's 1-1 and it's going to extra time. So Sutton have effectively carried out their game plan to absolute perfection. Just a really tight, tricky game. I think Sutton will be pleased because of the way they handled it. Blues will be pleased to get through. And I'm just inclined not to read too much into it, really. If there's one thing we can possibly carry forward and say this has been a bit of an abiding feature, is the possession to chances created ratio, which still needs some attention.
Yeah, that has been a theme of the season. It didn't feel like your typical cup tie to me, Brian. Like, when you normally watch them, like Tamworth against Huddersfield, which was on the Friday night, that was kind of Tamworth up and at them. They had this incredible long throw weapon that really hurt Huddersfield and eventually resulted in the goal. Sutton didn't really seem to have those weapons. They were just kind of waiting for a Blues mistake. And to be fair, Blues did almost give them one, I think, just before half-time as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
So I guess that was their game plan. It felt more like a league game plan against Blues rather than an actual cup tie to me. Because we've seen that so much this season where teams have just sat back and tried to soak up the pressure and wait for their one moment. And obviously it comes down to whether they can take it, and Sutton didn't.
Yeah, I mean, what's the FA Cup first round kind of David and Goliath cliche? It's that Goliath, David invites Goliath into his house and he's all over him. And Sutton were were physical. They did put bodies on bodies. They did try and play for set pieces, but they just never got that tempo. Their fans tried to create something and to tried to sort of make it a little bit of a bear pit, but it just never got there because the team on the pitch didn't really give them anything to go at. But as you say, Peck misplaced a pass just before half time, and the lad went clear. And to be fair to Peck, I think it was his covering run which forced was it Jaden Harris, I think his name was, forced him wide, and he ended up shooting from a position that maybe he wouldn't want to, slightly wider than he first appeared or he would be, when he was basically going straight through clear on Ryan Alsop. So Peck just about rescued that situation. There was the penalty shout, wasn't there, just before half time?
Sorry, how did Blues not have a penalty?
Oh yeah, we'll come to that. I don't think the Sutton penalty really was. I don't think there was much contact. Ben Davies kind of didn't see where the striker was coming from, and then the striker went down. Didn't really think there was any contact there. And then there was that chance at the end. So there were three anxious moments for Blues in a game that they absolutely dominated, both in terms of possession and territory. But yeah, you mentioned there the Ethan Laird penalty. I mean, I'm struggling to get my head into the space where you can try and understand what the officials have seen there. The contact, the one that sends Laird absolutely head over heels, is a yard inside the box. Are we then saying that that they've played the initial foul was by the wing back Civi, I think it was, and sort of they've played on because Laird appears to have escaped him, and then if you're gonna carry on playing on, then the ball's at Stansfield's feet once Laird gets upended. So it was just baffling, I think Aaron Carney said, and it's exactly the right word. If Blues get that penalty, stick it away, then I was going to say then it does become a different game. It probably doesn't. It probably just becomes 92 minutes or 80 to 82 minutes of Sutton sitting back and hoping for that one moment.
Yeah, because there was always that kind of the line between whether when a player was carrying the ball and he was fouled outside the box. Sometimes they'd say, "Oh, the foul started outside, so if he's gone down in the penalty area, it's not a penalty." Now I think we've seen more and more this season that it's coming that the foul continues inside the box, then it is a penalty. I think there were two different fouls with Laird, weren't they? And
there were.
He's quite clearly gone past the first one, and it's a completely different foul. I've like you say, I have no idea how it wasn't a penalty. It's actually almost laughable that it wasn't a penalty. Very, very, very odd. But moving on, Brian, a nice second round tie away at Blackpool. Do you want to do that one as well, or do you?
You booked that week off, have we? Yeah. Honestly, you actually have, haven't you, as well? I'm still not talking to you. I think I'm probably going to say on that one. Blackpool away obviously conjures up images of the horrendous 6-1 defeat. With Blues fans rightly unhappy, and Troy Deeney and Scott Hogan coming over and talking to fans at the end of the game, and Lee Bowyer, I think half expecting to lose his job after that game. It was an absolutely bizarre / terrible afternoon that was up in Blackpool. But yeah, nice Tuesday night. Oh no, it'll be a Saturday. Sorry, nice Saturday by the seaside in December. Sounds bracing. You might want to come anyway, just for the scenery.
Make a weekend of it, couldn't you? In Blackpool.
Exactly. I'm sure that's what will happen, and Blues will get plenty of tickets for that one as well. So it could be an entertaining, if not a particularly warm or dry experience up in the Lancashire coast.
Back to League One this weekend, Brian. Northampton Town at home. We'll come on to Northampton shortly, but Blues have lost top spot in League One in midweek with Wickham absolutely hammering Stockport 5-0 away from home yesterday. Should we be worried, Brian, at this stage? Blues not top of the league. They have got a game in hand over Wickham, of course, and will go back top of the league if they win it. But Wickham, to be fair, have been on a ridiculous run of form since they lost to Blues in August. to take top spot. Should we be worried, or is it just kind of a formality that the league will change hands if Blues have got games out?
It feels like eons since Blues last played a League One game, doesn't it? You know, I'm sort of the cup keeper, aren't I? And you're the League One goalkeeper.
I'm not up for the cup.
I'm Bailey Peacock Farrell to your Ryan Alsop. I mean, worried no. I suppose there was always going to be another club or another team that got on a bit of a charge. It happens to be Wycombe, somebody that Blues fans can feel fairly confident about. That, you know, Blues beat them quite handily away before inviting them into the game, didn't they, last August? I suppose, you know, we presumably it would be Wrexham that would be the one chasing Blues all the way, and they still might, or Stockport, but, you know, it was Stockport that Wycombe hammered 5-0, wasn't it? Going back to that Wycombe game, I thought they looked okay. I thought they had some threatening moments. I thought they pressed Blues quite well. They looked a well-coached team, so it's not a massive surprise to me. I know Adams Park is quite a difficult place to go. Would you expect them to go toe-to-toe and win for win with Blues over the next 6 months? I'd be really surprised. You know, they're not going to they haven't got the squad depth that Blues have got. I just think it is the emergence of a challenger from the pack. I'm slightly surprised it's Wycombe, but, you know, go them. Let's bring it on. Blues have got a game in hand, which if they win, you know, they'll go back top of the league, and, you know, several points clear of third place. It's third place that is the real one that we all need to be thinking about, isn't it? So yeah, it's entertaining. You know, it just adds a frisson to the title situation or the promotion situation. Would say at the moment that Blues are 4 points clear of Wrexham in third with a game in hand. So if they win that's 7, and that is priority one, isn't it? Is getting back into the Championship.
Yeah, no one wants to finish second though, Brian. You definitely want to win the league. That'd be the icing cake. You can't. I think it'd have a little bit of a sour note if it finished second. You know, you wouldn't want to finish second, would you, Brian? Surely.
You wouldn't, and it would. Would it verge on underperformance? It probably would. If you've got the biggest budget, then you're expected to finish top, aren't you? You know, so no, you of course Blues aren't in it to finish second, but they are in it to get promoted, and you know, for me, that's more important than the title, just about. But yeah, listen. I mean, you'd have plenty of egg on your face if Blues if Blues don't go up, wouldn't you?
They'll go up. Don't worry about that, Brian. Moving on to the Northampton game. We couldn't get an expert this week on Northampton, so I'm going to give a brief lowdown on what they're actually about. They're 18th in League One, 15 points from their 13 matches. They were dumped out the FA Cup by non-league Kettering Town last week. They bounced back by beating Leicester's Kids 3-0 in the Bristol Street this week. Obviously, Tyler Roberts on loan there. Don't believe he'll be eligible to play as a loan player. He's got 1 assist in his 9 League One matches. Another team, it's kind of a consistent theme of this season. Another team that doesn't have much possession of the ball. 43.8% average over their 13 matches in League One, which is the 5th lowest in the league. They have the fewest goals from open play with just 5. But the 3rd most from set pieces. So again, I feel like you could probably, you know, rinse and repeat our last 5 podcasts previewing League One opponents of Blues, and this feels pretty similar, doesn't it, Brian?
Yeah, not much possession, pretty good from set pieces. Richard and I actually, in the time you're away, had a discussion about Blues set pieces. Now, defensively, they look to have solved. Was there a little bit of an issue maybe 6 weeks ago when the likes of Peterborough and Wrexham were having a bit of joy, but they seem much more solid now? Would you agree with that?
Lincoln and Charlton as well via long throw-ins. So I think there was a period where 4 of 5 goals they conceded or something had come from set pieces. So they look better against Mansfield. I mean, again, that was a set piece goal because it's a free kick, but they look better against Mansfield on the actual set pieces. And Mansfield had some quite sizable units in there. So, yeah, it's not been a massive issue for me all season, just that 3 or 4 game spell where they couldn't seem to keep them out. But Blues have got assets and weapons at set piece, haven't they? You know, Clara, Williamson. Ben Davies now in for Bielik as well. So they've got heightened physicality to deal with it. And Northampton again look like that's going to be their main weapon.
Yeah. The flip side of that is the attacking set pieces. Blues don't really look that threatening. And to me, it's a question of winning the first contact. I think the delivery's been okay largely. They're just, whether they're not scheming up or game planning, free runners or something like that, or they're not that desperate to make the first contact. They don't seem that effective yet. I'd just be interested in your take on the attacking set pieces so far this season.
There's a big difference, I think, between defending a set piece and attacking a set piece. Defensive, largely it's zonal, isn't it? So you're in position there to win the header, and you're obviously protecting your own goal. Whereas with attacking, there does have to be a real desire to get on the end of it and make that first contact, doesn't there? I don't think the weapons I mentioned earlier, someone like Willem Willemsen, I don't think he's that guy who's going to go and attack an attacking set piece and bullet a header into the corner. Clara can. He has done it already. Well, he scored from a set piece against Walsall with his foot. Bielik has scored from a set piece with a header. So those two, I think, are those players that could make a difference in the attacking set pieces statistics. But yeah, I feel like the vast majority of their play is built around control, and they're not really a team that relies on set pieces, are they, as such? But like you say, I would like to see them be better, but I just think those two players are the only ones who really go and seek to win that first contact.
Yeah. Another thing, it's not on the running order, so I'll sort of lob it at you anyway. I think Krystian Bielik might be fit this weekend. Chris Davies said last Friday that he sort of had an outside chance to play against Sutton, but it would have been surprising for him to have been thrown into that environment. What's your view? Does Bielik come in automatically for Ben Davies?
I think it's pretty brutal, but yeah, I would say so. I think so.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate then. So Ben Davies is a more natural left-sided centre-half. Ben Davies probably plays centre-back more like a defender than Bielik does. Ben Davies has done nothing wrong to lose the shirt. Create an argument for Bielik getting back in.
I think the left-sided centre-half thing is redundant because Bielik, when he plays that position and Blues have the ball most time, it comes a back three, doesn't it? And he just slots into the middle and dictates play from there. Ben Davies has done that in his absence, but I don't think he does that anywhere near as well as Bielik does. I think he's been exceptional defensively. He's been really good defensively. I do think, I mentioned him earlier, Ben Davies has been one of the aerial weapons. I think Bielik's stronger in the air than him, I'll say that, in terms of set pieces. Defensively, though, he's very solid. I think, was it the game against... it wouldn't have been Huddersfield. The game against, who did Blues beat 2-0 at home recently midweek? Bolton.
Yeah.
We were both sitting in the press box, weren't we? And kind of 1-0 up, and we were like, you said to me, you think they might get a moment. I was quite confident they wouldn't, because Ben Davies and Clara aren't the sort to take risks, are they? Bielik does take more risks in possession, as we've seen this season. I think against Wickham, if you think back to that game, he was caught out a couple of times early on. There have been other occasions as well. But the system's designed to take risks, and I think he is one of the fulcrums of the system. Not as important as Beck for me now, but probably second most important player. And I can't see Chris Davies leaving his captain out.
Interesting. What was the phrase you used at the start of this conversation? Ridiculously harsh or brutal or something like that? It probably would be, wouldn't it? But yeah, okay. Interesting one on that one. Brings us to Stevenage, doesn't it? Which we found out yesterday, was it, that the Stevenage game is going to be postponed? Hardly surprising with so many international call-ups. That is now, Blues have had all three of their international break games postponed, haven't they? Cambridge, Stevenage, and what's the other one?
Exeter. Played in a few weeks, yeah.
Yeah. Where are you on the, is it right, or should Blues just, take a slight risk with a weak inside, or is Davies right to sort of go with to play? Let's call it ultra cautious. Maybe it's not ultra cautious, but to have these cancellations and the need to be rearranged.
It's a debate worth having. I think fans are having it based on that Shrewsbury game where Blues obviously play with a much weakened team. and thrashed them 4-0, and probably fans were thinking, why can't we play against Cambridge at the same time? Why can't we do that game when we've just beaten another team at the near the bottom of the league so convincingly? And I think Chris Davies has just taken the stance of, I won't go into these games with a weakened team, because if I lose without those players, then you're left with egg on your face, aren't you? And we've listed some of the players that could potentially be away during this international break. Willem Willemsen, Sung Ho Peck, and Jay Stansfield, 3 players who have been absolutely instrumental in the way that Blues have played this season and to the team. And those 3 probably aren't replaced. You can't really replace them that easily, can you? You could probably bring in Alfie May for Stansfield, fair enough. Peck, like I just said, I think he's the most important player in the team, and I think Willemsen's probably been the form player over the last month. So losing those 3, I don't see why Chris Davies would or should want to go into a game without them. You're just giving your rivals an advantage if you go and slip up with a weakened team, aren't you? So I completely understand why he's done it. Obviously, it is going to create a massive pile-up second half of the season, especially if Blues do go deep into the Bristol Street Motors Trophy. But they've got the squad to deal with it, haven't they? And they're going to have to deal with it when those games come, and Davies is going to have to rotate accordingly.
Yeah, indeed. I suppose what we would say about, if we can call it the second string, maybe the 6 or 7 players that have played in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, the guys like Yokoyama and Mark Leonard, players like that. Those are the 2. That team has produced the 2 biggest wins so far. And yes, you can say, it was Shrewsbury and Fulham under 21s of the opposition. That was pretty much Shrewsbury's strongest side at the time. Fulham under 21s, yeah, the gulf was obviously there. So, yeah, I think Chris Davies would back the squad rotation. In later in the season, he'd back those rotated players to do it, whilst also having Stansfield or a Peck or a Willemsen in the event that they actually need to call them off the bench or something like that. Just to sort of put a little bit of flesh on the bone. So we've obviously got the international break. So it's a week on Saturday, isn't it, Blues? Yeah. So we've got the game against Northampton, then it's the 2-week international break. When Blues return, they then have Saturday, Tuesday for the next 2 weeks. So that is, let me just pull up the fixture list here. It's Saturday the 23rd of November is away to Shrewsbury. Then the following Tuesday they go away to Exeter. Then it's the FA Cup against Blackpool on the 30th of November. Then on the 3rd of December, which is the following Tuesday, it's home to Stockport. And then it's away to Barnsley. And then that's on December the 7th. Then the Bristol Street Motors round of 32 game is likely to be played in the following week, so sort of week commencing December the 9th. So let's say that's the 10th or the 11th, something like that. So that's a third potential 2-game week. And then you're running up to Christmas, and you've got the busy week, and then you've got the Cambridge and the Stevenage fixtures, which also need arranging as well. So it is going to be, in making this decision, Davies is very much sort of creating a situation further down the line that Blues are going to really have to be full at it, aren't they?
Yeah, and you look at the first 4 or 5 fixtures you mentioned there. He's going to have to prioritise, isn't he? Obviously, the league comes first. The FA Cup game away at Blackpool, you'd imagine it's going to be a fairly weakened team right in the middle of 2 important league games. Yeah. Against Exeter, and who is the one after Blackpool? Stockport at home.
Yeah.
So again, two teams, Exeter and Stockport, 2 teams that have been among the early pace setters at various points. 2 of the stronger sides in the opening 13 games or what have you. So. Yeah, I'd imagine away at Blackpool, it's probably going to be quite a weakened team. And
extra 11th, Stockport are 10th, and they've also got to play 8th place Barnsley. So yeah, you will have to pick and choose your fixtures.
Yeah. So Blackpool for me probably becomes a luxury game, doesn't it? And obviously everyone wants to get to the 3rd round and potentially get a decent tie at St Andrews, but the league comes first this season, doesn't it, Brian?
It absolutely has to. And listen, I know Chris Davies isn't a massive fan of rotation, but he has shown in the cup competitions, certainly in the Bristol Street Motors competitions, that he's willing to rest some of the sort of the Pecks and the Iwatas and the Stansfields and the players like that. A quarter of the season gone already, Alex. Can you believe it?
I mean, it's absolutely flown, hasn't it?
You've not been around for most of it, so that might come as some surprise to you. But yeah, indeed. What I think you asked Chris Davies about sort of a lie of the land and how are you feeling about where we are as we stand at the moment. What did he say to you?
Yeah, so this is after the Mansfield game, which is obviously the club's 13th league game of the season. So he said, "It's looking good in the overall picture. We've started well, and what we've seen is what I knew already. Every game is tough. Although our results have been good, every game has been a challenge, and it's not an easy league. Anyone that thinks it's easy, they don't understand football. From my point of view, we are dominating games well, creating chances, generally defending pretty solidly. We can do more with and without the ball and keep trying to grow and improve how we impose ourselves and get better margins in games if we are up." I think he summed it up quite well there, to be honest. Blues have been pretty good, but they're not really blowing teams away, particularly in League One. I know they battered Fulham's children, but in League One they haven't really hammered anyone yet. There've been a few 2-goal margins, but most of the games have been quite tight. Nip and Tuck won by the odd goal, and there have been a few teams, not many who've kind of had me worried, but there've been a few teams who've had me worried. I think Huddersfield for the first 35 minutes looked quite good. Reading looked very good, but I think that game's in isolation because it was the start of the season. It's a very different team now because obviously the end of the transfer window. Wickham caused Blues a few issues, but didn't really have me that concerned.
Peterborough were 2-0 up.
Well, Peterborough were 2-0 up, but I was actually quite confident Blues would come back in a really weird sort of way, probably because it was Peterborough. They take so many risks and actually go for the third and fourth goal, and were there for the taking. Mansfield in that second half were probably as threatening as I've seen because Blues, for the first time, I felt really lost control of a game.
Yeah, so the sort of the collective thinking has been that somebody's going to take a spanking soon. In the end, it turned out to be Fulham's kids, didn't it? I don't know if a League One opponent is going to take a spanking. I mean, yes, Blues will have some big wins this season, but that's not been the game script so far, has it? What I would say about Davies's comments there is he made reference to dominating the games well, which they are, creating chances. Now, they could create more chances, couldn't they?
Yeah, I've been saying this all season. They have a lot of possession, but it's hard to create chances sometimes when the opponents are just sitting in in a low block on the edge of their own box. But Blues don't. You don't go into games or come away from games thinking Blues have created 5 or 6 chances and not scored here, like really good chances. The only game I had that feeling after, I think, was Huddersfield, where I think that probably could have been 5 because they had some really good chances and missed them. But generally, Blues have had a great control over games, a lot of possession, rarely look like conceding. They normally concede 1 or 2 decent chances. The opposition wait long enough, they do get something. But they've had such control over games in the possession. I can pretty much see what Chris Davies means, to be honest. I think he's quite happy with the way that things are going in that respect. And it would be ideal if they could create more chances and score more goals and, not have us kind of trying to see out 1-0 victories and 2-0, 2-1 victories and things. But that's the way it's been. I still think this team's probably got another 2 gears to get through. So, yeah.
Yeah. Plus the fact, as we've said many times, Blues do. If the league table is worth anything, then Blues have played the better teams in the league, haven't they? So far, and beaten nearly all of them.
Yeah, and someone made the point to me actually that Wickham haven't had as hard a run or played as many of the teams in and around them as Blues have. So
yeah, that's not to say when the fixture list opens up a little bit and Blues play Burton and Shrewsbury and Cambridge and teams like that. It's not to say that they're automatic victories, but you would think that Blues quality will tell, and it wouldn't be surprising, to be honest with you, if we see a little bit like we did it from Sutton. If it is, Christoph Clara camped outside the opposition penalty area, and Blues heat maps all being in opposition territory, and trying to tease away past a low block. It's on course, isn't it? If you'd have been offered this situation, albeit not top of the league now, if you'd have been offered this situation at the start of the season with all the change and all the uncertainty, would you have taken it?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously now we're in this league, we're looking at the success really is winning the league, and Blues are obviously still on course to do that. But Blues have just got to get promotion, haven't they? Ipswich got promotion from League One as second place and went on to get promoted to the Premier League, so it can be done that way as well. I think Southampton did that as well. So as long as they get back into the Championship, no one's really going to care.
9 of 12. That's probably as good as you can reasonably expect, if not a little bit better, isn't it? So, yeah. Let's just have a quick look at if the season were to stop now, or who are the front runners for certain situations, like Player of the Season. Who would you say would be the front runners for Player of the Season based on what you've seen in the first quarter of the season?
I've got 5. It's probably a bit too many, isn't it? So I'd go. My 5 would be Clara, Cochrane, Peck, Iwata, and Willemsen.
Okay.
That was my 5. My front runner, I think, would be Willemsen, just purely based on the last month. I know this is going to be music to your ears, but based on the last month, I think he's really kind of come to the fore. He's started to understand what English football's about. He's clearly got the physicality for it, and we've seen that he's got a absolutely brilliant technique to go with it as well. Some of the assists, some of the goals. I even thought his goal against Sutton was really, really good in the way he's just kind of clipped it and guided it into the corner. So, yeah, I've been really impressed by him. Is it 5 goals, 6 assists now, including the 3 against Fulham's 21? So, no complaints on him. And he would probably just edge Christoph Clara for me.
Yeah,
I'd wax lyrical about Beck as well because I love him, but probably Clara's been slightly better for me over the course.
Excuse me. Short list. I would go Clara. I'd go Cochrane. I'd go Peck. Iwata's great, obviously, and all the opposition journalists you speak to when you come away from a League One game, they've all gone, how is Tomoki Iwata in a League One team? He's the one that tends to really stand out. And then there's Willemsen. Alfie has had a good season so far, I think. Keshi Anderson's probably having his best season for several years. Jay doesn't feel like Jay's absolutely let rip yet, does it? And he's still got, is it 7 goals he's got so far?
I think 16,
one for Fulham, yeah. There are lots of contenders. I'm not going to sort of indulge my Thor mania. The other one I would say would be Peck. I've been, as you say, he's so central to the team. He's the one player you wouldn't want to lose for an extended period. I think there are other players that can come in and do a job and keep Blues on the front foot and ticking over. But Peck seems to be, he's the legs and the brains almost, isn't he, of this Blues team? So, yeah, if I was handing it out now, I haven't got the statistics really to say that Peck deserves it over Thor because of the goals, but just in terms of how central he is to the team, I think it would just about give it to Peck.
Yeah. One of those 3 for me, including Clara, having outstanding seasons. And by the end of it, like you say with Stansfield, we could be having a very different conversation if he does take off and score 25 goals. Alfie May, he's obviously targeting 20 plus goals as well. So hopefully by the end of it, there'll be a lot of contenders for that award.
Thoughts just before we go. Thoughts on Davies himself with his first quarter of a season in as like the number 1 first team management. It's been good. He's done well, hasn't he?
He's managing it quite well, yeah. I think the bigger test will come when the games start piling up after Christmas. I think, and how he manages those situations, how he rotates, when he chooses to rest key players, because he hasn't really had to do that much yet. But yeah, to come in the summer, implement a very different style of play. and make it hit the ground running has been really impressive. And I think I've said a couple of times before, I think it's quite telling that he took this job in League One, having had offers in the Championship before, because obviously he's been allowed to bring this group of players together that obviously are going to hopefully go through the leagues with Blues, and he's implemented the style and got them all kind of fitting into his system in a pretty similar way to what Kieran McKenna did when Ipswich were in League One. I hate to constantly draw on that comparison, but it's so obvious. And yeah, there's literally been no complaints. Like you say, 9 wins from 12. Is it 12 or 13 League One games?
12 League One games, yeah.
12 League One games. So, yeah, I mean, very, very good so far. Solid 8 out of 10 if we're doing player ratings.
Yeah, indeed. And what struck me, I think, is the vibe around the first team squad. Dipping in and dipping out, it feels so different to previous squads. And, you know, there is a level of expectation and a pressure of performance, you know, and almost a demand of excellence that I think Chris Davies is driving. You know, it's very, very, very business-like, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and yes, we can all get on and be mates and everything, but Chris Davies is a man on a business mission, really. So, yeah, given what might have happened, it's too easy for just to say that, you know, look, he's got the biggest budget, you know, they've got the best players, of course they should win the league. You know, maybe that's a card we can play later in the season when everything's a little bit more integrated. But from a standing start, I think Davies has done really quite well.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm going to throw in one more question at you. Yeah. Looking ahead to the next quarter, are there any players that you see emerging through the pack? I asked that question. I'll give you a bit of thinking time. I think it looks to me like Yokoyama is potentially going to become more and more important. I hope so, because I think he's electrifying. Now, there were a lot of calls for him to be thrown on or even start the game against Sutton. I think Sutton sat so deep, it would have been quite difficult for him to, you know, there'd have been no space behind for him to run into. It was only in the second half when they were a bit more tired that he came on and he started to have some joy. But he does look like a player that, you know, that can produce something, a little bit of magic. And does look to me in the last 10 days, couple of weeks, you know, not just in the cup competitions, but in the league as well, that he is starting to become more integrated and more valuable to the team. So I'm looking forward to seeing where he is after 24 games or whatever, you know, the 23 game midway point to the season.
He is the one, isn't he? I suppose the guy who was kind of marginalised in the early weeks of the season, didn't play much at all from maybe late August through to early October. So yeah, he's clearly got a lot of potential. Another interesting one is Scott Wright, because just when he looked set to get his chance, he obviously got injured after that Shrewsbury game where he scored twice and also got an assist. So he's one that potentially could break into the 11, because still he hasn't started a league game. So those two for me give Blues some good options in wide areas that they haven't had at times this season.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. Thank you all for listening. Do hit subscribe or like or leave a comment. Helps us no end. It's Northampton at home on Saturday. And just to finish off, it's a keep right on from me and a keep right on from Alex.